You are now listening to Soundspace, the podcast where we interview experts and professionals in the space of sound.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Soundspace, the podcast. I am your host, Jaian, and I am here once again with my fantastic co-host, Anthony Catchy. How are you, man?
I'm great, man. How's it going?
I'm doing fantastic. I'm so excited about our guest today. If you are a fan of music composition, film music, piano, multi-instrumentalists, and just a lot of music, you're going to love this episode. Today, our guest is Neusha Taherian. Let me please introduce her to you. Neusha is a composer, multi-instrumentalist, musician, and classically trained pianist from Montreal, Quebec, who specializes in electronic works, contemporary music, and soundtracks. She has a large background in deep listening practices, acting, directing, graphic scores, and traditional Irish music. Her education includes a CEGEP diploma from John Abbott College in theater, film, and communications, a bachelor's of fine arts in music composition from Concordia University, and she is currently completing a master's of fine arts in music composition for the screen at Columbia College, Chicago. Furthermore, she completed a semester abroad at the University Cork College in Ireland to complete her studies in music composition during the winter of 2019. She is the co-founder of the Concordia Composers Guild, which has the goal to bridge the gap between music education and its industry. She has experience as a writer and musical director for festivals such as the Montreal Fringe Festival. Her works include being the musical director and composer for the project Slaying in Suburbia in 2018, being the composer for the play To Kill a Sacred Duck in 2019, and being a composer for Inner Path, a short film by Camille Verreault. Please give a warm welcome to Neusha. How are you?
Hi, I'm good. How are you?
Very good. Thank you so much for coming on the episode today. Very excited to talk to you. It's a pleasure to reconnect with you. We met Neusha back in Concordia in the music department, and our paths are crossing once more on this episode on the internet, and it's a real pleasure to have you back on.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah, definitely.
Of course. I want to start with you really at the beginning, because obviously there's a lot of music in your story. It's very much a part of you. And I want to know, when did music become of importance to you? And if you could just really describe that development to us.
I always really liked to just fuck around as a kid. Like my sister was playing piano, and I was just like at the piano, like doing whatever and asking everyone to dance. Actually, not asking, demanding everyone to dance to my music. And horrible, like clinking and clanking.
Wow.
And it's like, you know, after a while, like it was just like always a part of my life, I guess. Like I would watch films and like I would listen to the soundtracks, and I was obsessed with them. And like Lord of the Rings, for example, was a really big one. That's probably my biggest, I wouldn't say influence, but you know, like what kind of got me to really want to do this as a kid, right, I guess. And like basically what I would do is I would go to the piano and I would try to like recreate, you know, by ear any of these themes from films that I would hear for years, till eventually my mom was like, all right, let's get you some actual piano lessons so you're not just fucking around all the time. And she did. And like since then it's just been like a roller coaster. I wouldn't say like fully uphill, you know, from there. There has definitely been like a downhill, especially in my teenage years, because, you know, who doesn't have a downhill during their teenage years? But no, it came back, you know, after that, when I, you know, became an adult and got over myself, I was just like improvising on the piano, and like, you know, I got accepted into Concordia for music composition when I didn't think I could get accepted, because I was like, this is not an actual like viable career, right? No, it was great. So it like technically it became important to me like as a kid, but like it especially, like I guess the reconnecting to music was actually when I got my acceptance letter, because that was when it was like, oh shit, like I can do this for real? Crap, man, that's awesome.
That's really cool.
Oh, wow.
So piano was your first instrument, and like how do you feel was your growth as a composer and musician with it?
Yeah, a piano. So yeah, I like, as you said, I was classically trained in piano, and I didn't necessarily like classical music, which I think had a big part in how it developed from there, because basically from my like I guess hatred of classical piano, and how like strict, and you know how I thought it was just about showing off, which I know it's not. And if there's any classical pianists listening to this, you're amazing. I'm not trying to say anything about that, but
throwing shade. Just throwing shade.
But it's more just for me anyways, it felt like someone was chaining me down down. So from there, I started to improvise.
Right.
And that's actually how it became like, went from just playing to composing, was because I would just like improvise from the sheer like anger of it, basically.
Okay.
Right. Of course.
Yeah.
Of course.
Nice. And like, did you have a support when you wanted to pursue a career in music? Was your family supportive, or your parents, were they supportive when you decided to do a career in music?
I would say, like, for the most part, yes. I think at the very beginning, it wasn't about music. It was more about the fact that like I kind of wanted to just focus on arts and music.
Right.
But they were like, no, you should do sciences as well. You should do, high math, like the high school in Quebec where it's like you do TS and SN and like, I
do.
Which is
I
like,
do.
Yeah. Like I couldn't choose anything other than like physics and chemistry, and they were very strict about that. So I did get support from them, especially after that period of my life. But I did feel like in that period as a teenager, when I had to do science at the same time as music, I didn't think it was like sustainable whatsoever, and I definitely burnt out. But once I got into my adult years, like when I finally, actually, especially when I went to university in music, like I can't even like describe how supportive my parents are and continue to be. Like they're very, like, my siblings, everyone is like super up for it, and yeah, no, they're amazing.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's amazing to hear. Honestly, I feel like having supportive parents for music is such a key to just having the confidence to develop that and to like make the jump towards it. Because
yeah,
I personally had moments where I was like, oh, I'm going to go into music. No. I'm going to do social sciences like 80% of my high school. You know what I mean?
For sure, it's the confidence. Absolutely.
Yeah, the confidence of it definitely. It will secure and help that a lot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. I agree. Like, I think that parents should just like, whenever your kid is like, they want to do something, they're good at something, just let them do it. Like, fucking feed that, because we're going to suck at everything else. So you don't want us to be very bad, scientists or very bad accountants. Lord knows we do not need those.
So many shots being fired.
All right, Neusha, you're going to get canceled right about now.
I am so sassy.
It's all good. You talked a lot about your background on your LinkedIn, and specifically one on traditional Irish music, which I personally never even thought of before, and I never came across that. So I wanted to know how that specifically influences your music and your composition.
Yeah, I mean, one big part of it is that Irish music really taught me about rhythm in like a huge way. Because one thing that I did when I was in Ireland was I started learning the bodhrán, which is the traditional like Irish drum. So it got me to like feel rhythm, it got me to understand rhythm, and I definitely think that like I have to credit, my teachings over there to like just being able to like, be on time, I guess, with the click, and to be able to like come up with interesting rhythms. Yeah, exactly. But the other part of it is I tend to use my voice a lot in my recordings, or at least compose with my voice a lot. I did start to learn like Irish traditional music in terms of like singing. There is like this technique called seanos. I didn't fully go into it at first, but like I started to learn it while I was in Ireland, and then when I left, I started to develop it a little bit more. It's still like a very difficult technique. Like I would not call myself like at all a master of it. Absolutely not. But it's a practice that I've been having for a while, and that has helped a lot with my compositions, especially like having that like really cool like like ancestral like fantasy sounding voice, which is not what it reduces to, obviously, but it's something that like can bring in a lot of storytelling, and the techniques used in Irish traditional singing are just fucking awesome. So yeah, like it's kind of how it influenced my compositions, was the rhythm and really cool vocal techniques.
Yeah, for sure. I can see how it would enrich in your compositions.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely. Yeah. Can we go through a little bit of your education and learn about what you've studied? Because you have a wide educational history. So could we start with theater, film, and communications at John Abbott College?
Yeah. So that was, I was so much younger. So like I didn't always want to be a composer. I knew I wanted to work in like entertainment, film and theater and all that stuff.
Right.
And at John Abbott, actually, it's like the school that's closest to me for CEGEP. I mean, I didn't have a music program and I was interested in applying for that, but they just didn't have one. So that's kind of why I went into theater, film and, you know, like video production, communications, all that stuff, which is like really like vague, but it was vague, right? Because that's what CEGEP is in the end. But it was fun because I don't know. I tried to sneakily try to write music for film that I was working on, but like I was really bad at it because I didn't understand how to do it. So, especially syncing, it did not work. But you know, like it still taught me like a great deal about storytelling. I like credit that definitely for John Abbott. It also taught me how to speak better English and write better English, you know, with communicating, which I think is a big deal. Because
really, how so?
Because like, well, okay, especially right now, I'm like the only French speaker in my class, although there are other international students who speak different languages. I've spoken with other international students. We do feel like, you know, sometimes the language barrier is very strong, especially when communicating with like directors and communicating with other musicians and everything. And we're trying to explain, I don't know, like, you know, what it is that we're trying to say, or like we're trying to understand what they're trying to say. There's definitely like a language barrier. I've always spoken English, but never extremely well, especially going through like the French education system before my CEGEP. And then in CEGEP was like the first time that I actually like sat down and like I remember having in theater at John Abbott, like I had the script and I had a dictionary next to the script because I had like highlighting words I didn't understand because I was like, what the fuck is this play about? I didn't know. But it's great because it forced me to like, you know, become a better communicator and English speaker in the end.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So I think that's like, you know, invaluable, like in its own way. And that was, yeah, basically like what I credit like John Abbott for was like that beginning of communication, but also storytelling with all those like theater, film.
How did you transition from there to Concordia and music composition?
Yeah. So, as you probably know, like Montreal has 2 English-speaking universities.
Yeah.
So your choices are so minimal. I really did not want to go to McGill. Everyone in my family...
And French university was not an option?
No, I wanted to get out of the French system especially since I went to Abbott. I was like, what is this? Like the French system barely taught me any English. And like, I don't want to be, I don't know. I can speak French for the rest of my life. I love speaking French, but gosh, the world is mostly English speaking. So
it functions mostly in English. Absolutely.
Exactly.
I hear you.
So like, I knew I wanted to go to English school. I knew I did not want to go to McGill whatsoever. So my only option was Concordia. Literally what I did was I went to the open houses because I didn't fucking know what to go into or what to do. I was just like, this is the school I have to get in.
Oh man, I get that.
Yeah. Like, what am I? So I like grabbed, you know, the pamphlets that have like the booklets that have all the programs. I basically like spent time reading every single program, being like, what am I gonna fucking study? And I had bookmarked like film, you know, theater and like communications and all that stuff because it was already what I did in CEGEP. So I was like, this will be, you know, like a smooth transition. But music was one of the things that I had actually walked up to the 8th floor, which is where the music department is in Concordia.
Yeah, I miss that place, man.
Yeah, me too. So I walked up to the 8th floor and this was during the open house. And I just remember everyone being so happy. like people not being miserable was a big thing. But also like I spoke to Dr. Christine Beckett, who's like one of the professors there. She's awesome. And I told her about my background. I told her that like, you know, I'm not that good at music, as in like this was a time where I had quit music for 2 years, you know, and that I'm kind of out of practice and I don't know if this is actually something I can do. And she encouraged me to apply and she was very adamant about it. So I did. That was like one of the six programs that I applied to Concordia. And then I got into like theater. I got into like my first choices. So I got into the theater and music. And then from there I was like, shit, like I got to say yes to music. I also did say yes to theater. So like I started out as a double major and I was in acting and music. But I dropped acting as a major, I think like in my second year, if I'm not mistaken, or maybe my third year. Yeah, because I hated it, and music was where my heart was at. So.
Whoa, so you dropped it pretty late.
Well, the thing is that I did like a full year of like a lot of classes in acting, and then the next year it was almost like I was dropping it slowly anyways, because like I had like just like 1 or 2 classes maybe, and I had mostly music classes, so like it was like kind of festering out anyway. And yeah, I hated it. It was the worst thing ever. But yeah, no, I'm so like the day I decided to do that was the best day of my life, honestly.
Well, that's good.
So bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's basically like what Concordia was like. Just
for sure.
5 years of that.
5 years?
Right.
5 years.
5 years. Wow.
Yeah.
That's many years.
Fucking insane. Yeah.
Yeah.
I actually wanted to like, before we jump to the next 2 schools, you mentioned not wanting to go or not enjoying McGill. You are like, why just like rule one out right away? I'm very interested in knowing that.
So my whole family went to McGill.
Oh, okay.
Almost out of spite. Like I was very much like the type of person that's like, you guys all went to McGill and you guys all hated your school there and you're all miserable.
Oh man. Jeez.
Okay.
So I had this hatred of McGill.
You had like a predetermined bias against McGill. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. I fucking hated them.
I wanted to also going back to Concordia. That, like I said, that's where we met you. You were very, very involved in student life and student activity.
Yeah.
I can think of like the Women in Music conference. You going to classes and introducing yourself as you were like a co-creator of the Concordia Composers Guild. Like you were just very involved. You know, like we saw you a lot. You were always on the 8th floor. I remember actually the first time I ever met you, I had booked a piano room and I walked on the 8th floor. I was super confused as to where it was, and you just saw me and you were like, "Oh yeah, what are you looking for?" You were just like super inviting, super kind from the beginning. And you're like, "Oh, yeah, I have this room booked for a piano." And you're like, "Oh yeah, it's over there." And you led me to it. And you were very helpful. Have you always been that network friendly? You know what I mean? Just very involved. And where does that come from? Because it's very, very important, I feel like, to have when you're in such a relation-based industry.
Yeah. Oh shit. So like I've always been social, but like where it comes from is kind of like, I don't think it's dark. I think it's just like a little bit like, oh shit. Like basically what happened was that I was like, when I was in theater, I really had like a bad time, like a very bad time. I didn't trust anyone. I thought, and like, you know, I was kind of like, I had like a couple exes in the theater department, and like the theater world is very small. So it made it very difficult to know who to talk to and what to talk about and all that stuff. And it kind of made me, you know, paranoid. And I hated, like, I was just like so, you know, careful of who, like, what to say in front of people. And I hated that. And I actually went through, like, when I had gone to my first music class, I was afraid because I thought that kind of attitude would kind of follow me. And I actually did go through to like therapy for this, because I was like in the theater department, you know, like long story short, there was a little bit of like ostracization that was happening. And like there was someone who like threatened me at some point. It was great. Oh, great time.
Oh,
yeah,
wow.
no, horrible. I hate it. I have a very bad taste in my mouth from the theater, like just theater world in general in Montreal, but especially
I'm really sorry.
the department
I
of
see where
theater
you
at
dropped it.
Concordia. Yeah, and it's, yeah, you know, it is what it is, and I've heard a lot of people go through similar things. So it's like, it's something that the industry itself really needs to fix, I find, because you see it a lot in different theater groups. There's a lot of like, anyways, you know what I mean. They need to fix themselves. Not to, you know, shit. Am I gonna get canceled? But anyways,
You say whatever you feel like saying.
Nah.
There's this is totally like a safe space. Whatever you feel like saying.
Definitely a safe space.
After that, like I had gone through a lot of therapy because I had so much anxiety from, you know, having to work with my exes, especially, and like having to like kind of face these people who I knew hated my guts and like wanted to hurt me. I remember talking to my therapist about that and being like, I don't know if I can trust people anymore or as well as I did. And she actually really helped me with that. She was like, listen, yes, you come from like this kind of really like hostile environment. But when you're going into this new environment, like it's always best to just put your best foot forward and just like see how people react and to listen to your gut. And if you feel like people are responding well, just keep going with that. And then that's how I started it. Like I started to kind of, just introduce myself, be nice to people. And then eventually it was just like, wow, like people are so nice here. So it kind of influenced, like the fact that people were so kind also influenced me in becoming even more open and even more like, I guess, like welcoming and wanting to talk to more people and help more people.
Right.
Because I wanted people to feel like they could also be welcome coming from like a really weird, dark-ish place. But at the same time, it's like, I don't know, maybe if it wasn't for that, maybe like I wouldn't be as good as I am today to like actually like talking to people and stuff like that. Yeah.
Okay, I see what you mean. No.
Oh God. Okay.
Honestly, like I feel like it's the kind of thing that you went through something really bad and you made the best out of it and you became a better version of yourself through it, so you had like this really beautiful growth as a human. So, and the thing is, like, university is such a period of our life where we it's so formative. I grew a lot. I was at Concordia for 2 years, but if I compare myself at the beginning of the music department at the end of it, I was a different person, honestly. And that was through like the experiences I lived, the classes I had, the people I met. You know what I mean? And like people like you and Anthony are byproducts of that, are people who influence me in great ways. So I feel like it's like this like family that we are a part of. And it's not even to sound corny, but honestly, like people from the music department at Concordia, we kind of just have this thing that we get it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like we're just like fun and we're cool and it's we're on the blue couches, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And we talk to Kevin Moon and we chill, you know what I mean? And it's a Friday and what's your plan for this weekend? I got a concert in downtown Montreal. You want to come out? Yeah, I got an extra ticket in my back left pocket for you. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's what I really appreciated about the music department. Did you have any other thoughts on the Concordia music department before we keep going down on your other education that you've done?
Just that like I really fucking enjoyed my time there. Like leaving was part of it was really difficult because I do feel like everything you said is true and like it did shape who I am today.
Yeah.
And like there's not a place that was more welcoming to me than the music department. Even like from that day, like I said, that the open house where I just walked up to the 8th floor and people were happy. Like it was just like that department I think means a lot to me, and the faculty there are just so amazing. And like if I had to say anything, it would just be like I'm like lost for words of how much like I love my time there and like how much I appreciate the people there.
Absolutely.
So yeah, okay.
Definitely.
I like that.
So earlier you mentioned you took a semester abroad in Ireland. Can you elaborate a little bit more on that?
Yeah,
It sounds like really fun. That sounds like a lot of fun.
Yeah.
That was a huge growing experience, honestly. I would actually recommend people to, either go a semester abroad or travel a lot, because I think it's like, again, invaluable experience. I did like a semester abroad in music specifically. So I had all music classes, including like the learning the bowron, the Irish drum, learning the tin whistle, which is a kind of Irish recorder. I did like a rhythm class, which was fucking awesome. Composition class, all that stuff. And like being surrounded by a different like group of people, that because I feel like you always get in your head when you're in the same place, and then when you leave that place, all of a sudden like getting out of your comfort zone is so terrifying, but it's so awesome. Like the type of people that you meet, but also like if we're talking strictly about music, like we went to pubs where there was like live performers, so there's these like traditional Irish sessions, and just like being around that like music was so cool, because it's just like, oh, I've never like actually heard this in my everyday life, just like live, just people just playing this kind of music, or going to like open mic nights and hearing what I just did an open mic, and like I was so nervous that I like after it ended I ran off stage.
No.
I was just like, okay, thank you, bye.
Oh man.
My name is Mike Drop.
It's okay. Like, bye. But it's okay because it was still a good experience and it was so fun. But yeah, like while I was there, I got to travel kind of all around Europe. I went to Malta, I went to Paris, I went to I went to England, I went to Scotland, I went to all these different places, and like that was part of the experience that I needed to kind of grow as a person, but also grow as a musician, because again, it opened my brain
for
to
sure.
like different sounds, but also like a whole new world. And it's also like, I've talked to a lot of people who've had like a similar experience when they're abroad. There's a moment when you're abroad where you're actually thinking in your mind, like, what the fuck am I doing with my life? And like, you feel extremely overwhelmed and like everything is like kind of crashing down on you. But you know, everyone who I talked to who had that experience, and myself included, there's like a certain point where it peaks and you're like, oh shit, like I really don't know what I'm doing anymore. And then there's like something you do, you know, like I went for a run, for example, and like I found a bench that I sat on. And then just that, like sitting on the bench, looking out into the water, and there was like the sun that was shining on the water. It was really beautiful. It almost feels like there was a moment of like release, and like I just knew that everything was going to be okay. And I feel like I wouldn't have had that kind of like realization if I hadn't gone through such like a difficult time in my life of being so far away from home, of like visa situations, of like, you know, actually having to grow up, you know, being slapped in my face of like, fuck it, you're alone now, you know, you gotta do this, you gotta figure this
Figure it out.
It's, yeah, it was such a like pure experience. And like that moment, you know, the one where I ran and I sat on that bench, I like later on wrote a piece about it. It became, to this day, it's still my favorite piece I've ever written. But also like I recently got a tattoo of the bench because I'm just like, this was like really pivotal time in my life. Like it was super cool. Yeah, it's fucking awesome.
That's really cool.
Like it's just like it's immortalizing like that moment of like I actually knew I was growing up for real. You know, it was a like a switch happened, and really don't think that would have happened if I would have stayed in Montreal.
That's poetic as fuck, Neusha. I feel like you just ripped that off of a James Joyce book.
Yeah.
I'm just kidding, but
fuck yeah.
I'm just messing around. That was beautiful.
No, thank you. I love it. Oh my God.
So,
Wow.
Cork University, and after that, you went to you're still in Columbia College, Chicago.
Yeah. So I
Okay,
just finished
how's
my
that
first
going?
semester there.
Wow.
Yeah, congrats first of all. It's true.
Thank you. Thank you. It is so intense.
I knew it. I was like this.
I have never written this much music like in my life. I think we've written upwards of between 50 to 100 minutes of music, maybe more.
In just a semester. Wow.
It's just, it's fucking crazy. Like, I just like I still have to like, you know, work through it and try to like, go through my external hard drives and be like, okay, like how can I actually like, how do I clean this up? Because there's so much in there. But it was so cool because again, it's that whole experience of leaving home, going to a totally different city and country, having that culture shock happening.
Yeah.
Right.
But also meeting all these like really extremely talented people. Like it really humbles you. Like when I was in Montreal, there was a point where I was like, I don't know how much more I can learn. I don't know where to go to learn more. But then when I got to Chicago, it was almost like I was back at zero. Like I'm like, oh shit, like I'm so bad. But no, it's great. It's a really humbling experience, and I have met again like so many like talented and extremely different composers while I was there, and it's a very crazy program. I can't recommend it enough. It was actually ranked the second best in the world for film music not so long ago by the Hollywood Reporter, which is awesome.
Dope.
It's very practical. It really like simulates the real world. Like we just started the semester with one feature film that we had to do, which was like a feature film that our professor had worked on. And basically like our professor was playing the role of a director, and every single week we had to come in with cues that we had written that he had spotted with us, and then we had to like do rewrites, and at the end of the semester we had like 10 rewrites to do. And that's just like your first semester. And your second semester you have 2 films you're working on, and then it keeps adding and adding and adding. So you're like constantly juggling these projects at the same time as doing like orchestration assignments. Yeah, it keeps you on your feet so much, but you start to develop a rhythm, and as the second years told me right before the break, they were like, yeah, you start developing a rhythm, but then every new semester you've got to fucking find it again because everything gets so much harder and much more intense. So I'm looking forward to that, but it's still like so cool that like it's so practical, and we got to meet so many people. I got to meet film students. I got to meet like these composers that are in the industry, you know, during the time that they came for like a guest lecture, and like Columbia College is very, very adamant about teaching you actual skills and like our class, like we have a class that's like, it was just about like contracts and like knowing where to actually find your money, like where do you actually get your PROs from, like how do you juggle PROs from a different country to like, you know, the United States and all that stuff. So like the information that you have is very useful. So yeah, it's great. I still don't believe I'm in this program right now.
Right. Just for the audience, what is a PRO?
It does stand for Performance Rights Organization. It's basically like your royalties. So when you have like a cue in a film, so you have a something you've composed for a film that turns into a cue, and then you have these PROs that represent you. So like, you know, SOCAN is the Canadian one. That's probably what most Canadians work with. You know, in the States, we have BMI, ASCAP, and CISAC. And it's basically like whenever your, you know, film, although it's not just for film, it's for anything where the audio is actually played. Whenever your film is like played and they use your cue in it, then you get like, you know, part of your royalties. So you get like a percentage. Yeah, exactly. And so that's what a PRO is basically. I'm sorry if that was like a bad explanation. Trying to
that makes sense.
Like, you just lost me even more, Neusha. No, I'm kidding.
That makes sense.
I'm like trying to make it as like easy to understand as I can.
We got it.
It's performance royalties basically.
What I noticed between your education path and mine is that I also did like college, bachelor's, and master's. I wanted to ask you, how would you compare the caliber of the people in your classes from Cégep to Concordia to now at Columbia College, Chicago? And what would you say is required if you even wanted to attempt to study in a master's such as this one? You know what I mean? Like, what's the caliber? What's the skill set? Like, what's the drive required? Like, what's the level? What's the standard?
You kind of just have to be very determined because you're throwing like a big chunk of your time away to do this. You know, it's like, it's not just like you're not just like doing something for fun anymore. And I feel like that's, you know, one of the biggest differences from CEGEP to undergrad to grad is that like CEGEP was a lot more like, you know, we're mostly doing it for fun or like as a transitionary period or whatever. Undergrad starts to become more serious, but there's still a lot of like, you know, leeway, like to kind of play around and to kind of experiment and all that stuff. So you can try different things, right, in your undergrad, but still be serious. But there's a part of you that is very much like, yeah, you're not like fully like committed to one thing particularly. And then when you get to grad, or at least like, you know, what I'm doing right now, you gotta commit. You gotta be like, sure, 100% this is what you want to do. Not only are you putting a shit ton of money in it, but you're putting a lot of time in it too. Like, you know, like there's this one question that our program director asked during the interview to get into the program, and the question was, why do you want to do this to yourself?
What?
Okay.
It was so funny. Because it's true. It's like, why would you do this to yourself? Why would you put yourself through like crazy hours, through these like stupid scheduling where sometimes you're working from like 9 p.m. to 6 a.m. because you need a cue that's done? Like, why would you put yourself through this? And like, then you have to answer the question, right? And it's something that you kind of ask yourself a lot when you're in this program, because it's like, gosh, like I'm actually putting in like so much of like my whole life is this right now, or at least a big chunk of my life is this right now. So you really have to be sure that it's what you want to do. I guess it's okay if you don't know, and if you started and if you drop out. Like, I'm not trying to say like if you are thinking of dropping out after a semester, like it's the end of the world. But before going into it, I think like one of the biggest things that you need to do is to be 100% determined in your path, because it's a big leap. It's a huge leap.
Yeah, it's another country.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Let's say, when are you finishing your master's exactly? And about, it's a 2-year program, I imagine?
Yeah, so it's a 2-year program, but you have a summer internship.
Okay. What's your plan after the summer internship, after after you finish your master's? Are you staying in Chicago? Are you coming back to Montreal? Like, do you have a game plan?
Sort of. Like, it's kind of a loose game plan because it totally depends if, you know, it succeeds.
Okay.
But basically, our internship is in LA, and we work with a composer over there of our choice. You have to be very strategic with it, which is the whole thing. I am hoping that what is going to happen after is that I stay and work with that composer as an assistant, like a full-time assistant. That would be best case scenario. The second best would be like, sure, I don't work with the composer anymore because they don't have a position or because they're not looking for an assistant, but I start like networking and I start like looking for another composer to work with in LA. And then I become their assistant, or I work as like a full-time composer for like, or like a sound engineer or something for like a video game company. All these plans do require me to stay in LA. So I am actually like planning on moving to LA and staying there for what they call like the 10-year hustle, which is like 10 years of like you're working really, really hard in the industry. After 10 years, like supposedly you're popular enough or you're known enough that you don't have to be in LA anymore. Okay. So like that is actually like a big part of my plan is like
that's commitment.
Yeah. I love it. The thing is that I don't want to come back. So that's like, for me, life is always about like moving forward, going to the next place. I just don't see myself coming back to Montreal. So
Where do you see yourself?
So I know that this is like, well, at least for the 10-year hustle in LA, definitely. But if I have to look at past that, I would honestly just see where life takes me. I just don't see myself staying in one place for my whole life either. It really depends like what happens, you know, like I'm also like, you know, a single woman who's like doing their master's. So like there's nothing tying me down literally anywhere except for like my family being like, no, stay. I'm like, no.
And that exact
I'm
voice.
Okay. No, please. So definitely see myself staying there. Gonna get a house with a bunch of composers, probably gonna buy a car because you can't do anything without a car.
Sure you can.
You know,
sure you can.
No, you really can't. Not in LA.
All right, LA. Yeah.
That's basically my plan.
Yeah.
I mean, it sounds legit. Yeah,
for
Thanks,
sure.
man.
Very cool.
Yeah.
I'm curious, what goes behind the creation of a graphic score, and how often does it play factor in your compositions?
Welcome behind the creation. Like I would say that the whole thing about a graphic score for me necessarily is the fact that like it kind of lets you experiment to the fullest extent, so it doesn't like limit you in what you can do, then you don't think about what's on the paper, you know, and all that stuff. So like what goes behind the creation is really just like that playfulness and that ability to just be like, I'm gonna see if I fuck around enough with a bunch of things, what's gonna come out of it. It plays a huge factor in my composition. I used to like actually draw out the graphic score, and then like even when I would write music that wasn't a graphic score, like that was just like an actual like orchestral piece or like, I don't know, like a piano piece or something, I would kind of draw the like main, like I guess like the peaks and like the feelings and everything graphically, you know, like almost like a sketch to kind of get a feeling of how the score is going to be. Interestingly enough, I do feel like a film is almost like its own graphic score because it's very visual, right? I do feel like there is still that element of like watching, you know, looking visually at something and then seeing all the details and trying to like translate that into music. Obviously there's an element of storytelling that isn't just visual, and that's, you know, your job as a composer is to also bring that element into it. You know, I don't use it in the sense of like I write it down anymore with pen and paper, but like that idea of experimenting, that idea of kind of like being open to looking at visuals and like to kind of like translate those things and just being like, what's gonna happen if I take a stick and I put it in a bathtub and I do this and I record that, like, you know, like like those ideas are still a huge part of
you do
like,
in that voice
influences my composition.
What's gonna happen?
Yeah, exactly. Like, what's gonna happen? I wonder.
So many voices on this episode.
It's the theater background, ladies and gentlemen.
This became a voice acting episode.
Exactly. Yeah.
Oh my god. Oh, yes.
I just want to tie off on your education here with comparing and contrasting the Canadian music education system versus the US music education system. I have a prediction. I want to give like a thought. Okay. Because I also did a graduate film music program, and when you compare what you described to what I experienced, I really feel like you have way more possibilities, way better connections, probably well-funded programs. You're composing way more hours of music than we ever thought of even. attempting. So I just feel like the programs are probably way better developed. That's what my feeling is. Am I on the money? Am I wrong? Like, tell me all about the difference between those two music education systems.
Yeah. Oh, I don't want to say anything bad about, either or, but just you are right. Like, one of the main aspects of American, like at least where I am going to school, is they have so much more money, and that plays a huge factor in it. Like, because they have so much more money, they're able to like have better, equipment, sometimes better facilities. Although I do think the facilities at Concordia were pretty good. Like they are very good. And like the EV studios were amazing, and like the JMSB studios were really good. Like, so like props for that, like credit for that, honestly. But it's also like one of the big differences that I saw was that Canada is much more academic. The professors that teach, they have experience in the field, but they're a lot more like people who have like, PhDs and like, and there's nothing wrong with that, but there's definitely like a disconnect, sort of with like what's going on right now versus like what was going on before. And a lot of our professors at Columbia College, for example, are working right now. So like, our director just worked on the An American Traitor, which is like the film with Al Pacino that just came out. He composed the music for that. There's like Kaz, who's like also working as a composer on the side and working like for other things as well in music. We have someone who's like the music tech professor who has a band, and he's been touring, and like he also works on like, he worked on a documentary recently. He and he works as an audio engineer for other things. Like, there's this sense of like people who teach also are not necessarily extremely academic, and they kind of like throw away the academia, at least in Columbia College. I'm not trying to speak for the whole US music education system, because like I don't know all of it, as well as I don't know all of the Canadian one, honestly. But I'd say like one of the biggest differences is definitely the money, definitely like how academic versus non-academic people are leading them, and how involved people are with the industry. And like, that's actually one of the reasons why we have so many people who are like so accomplished as our guest speakers. It's not because like, it's not necessarily because like our school is like can fund them. I mean, it's probably like a big part of it that they can pay them, but like the other side of it is that they're literally friends with our professors, like, because they worked in the industry together, or they're still working in the industry together. So like, we had like, we have like composers in residence that teach us like every single year. We have the trio that do the animated Batman series that are composers in residence. This year we had Jonathan Miller, who was it wasn't us, it was the second years I had them, but like who did the composition for Life Below Zero, which is a documentary on Disney Plus documentary series. Sorry. There's like last year the composer in residence, gosh, I forgot his name. This is really bad, but he's a composer for Letter for the King, which was a Netflix series, and he was the composer in residence. So like, it's all these people that like, they all know each other, and like the network is much more open, also because of location. Like, let's be real, a lot of composers live in LA.
That's just how it is.
You kind of can't get over that. So because of that, location wise, when you're in the States, people like travel in the States a lot, and it's actually really easy to travel within the States. Like I'm thinking of doing like weekend trips to California and things like that while I'm there, probably next semester, because it's super cheap. And it's super easy. People actually go around and get to know each other. So there's that. It's like so much easier. It's so much more accessible versus like a $400 like ticket from Montreal to Chicago. That's just like 2-hour flight. Like, come on, guys.
Yeah, totally.
Like, there's the aspect of, it's just like, it's just easier, location wise. Yeah. Again, not to say anything about the Canadian music education, but it's one of the reasons why I left, Canada, and I really wanted to not go to, I didn't apply to any master's like schools in Canada, because I was like, I know that I'm just gonna stay within the same community here, and I kind of my goal is to branch out and to work within films, in like indie films as well, but like Hollywood films and things like that. Like I'll fuck it, I want to do that. That sounds like so much fun, also a lot of work, which it is. But so I decided, like, in order to do that, you kind of have to be there. So yeah,
for sure.
Wow. Okay.
Guys, it's expensive. Okay. It's very expensive. It's a big deal. It's not like, not anyone, it's not like, it's a big deal. Like, you gotta, like I said, you gotta be determined if you're going to make that step of going to the US.
Yeah. You have to have your mind made up, because, it's a lot of money, and this,
Oh, yeah,
You can't just
go
like,
back.
oh, I'm not sure if I want to do this. Here, let me spend several $1,000.
God. Oh yeah. Yeah, as you heard, I was paying my tuition
Yeah,
today.
yeah,
Next
exactly.
semester.
Right.
I'm curious.
Yeah.
Academically, has your experience changed, like pre and post? Well, not post pandemic, but pre-pandemic and pandemic.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm very lucky because I did spend like the first year of the pandemic still at Concordia, and I did think it was like really like, as in, it wasn't like the school was shit, but like as in like the experience was really bad. I hated being online. I think like Zoom is probably like the worst thing ever that could happen.
Yeah, it's just like a music program must be so difficult to do online.
Yeah, like accessibility wise, it's great, and I'm like totally for it. But it's just something that is constantly there is very like it kind of it just makes you so depressed. But I am so lucky because Concordia College has intense mandates for the pandemic. So I've been in person since I got to Chicago. We have to wear masks, obviously. I have all my classes in person. We are also very small courses. Like we're 13 people in a class. And then our bigger class, which is in an auditorium, I think we're like 25
that's great.
or 26 people. Like there's so much space, but also, like I said, Concordia College mandates are very strict. So like you actually have to scan your ID card to get into the building. And on your ID card, there's an indication whether or not you're vaccinated. And if you're not vaccinated, you can't get into the building. The only time that you can get into the building and you're unvaccinated was at the very beginning of the school year, because people were getting vaccinated at that time if they hadn't been. And you had to come in with a test, like a negative test every single time. So like it was very strict. And now like if not all people are vaccinated at our school, like the cases are so low at Concordia College. And I just got a text when I got to Montreal for the winter break. I got a text from the school saying like, as of next semester, we're going to require you to have your booster shot, which I got mine. And the thing is that they block you from the system if you don't do it. So they really, really are strict with that, which like, I know that people have different opinions about like these mandates and everything, but I think if it wasn't for those mandates, like I wouldn't have had my education in person. So I'm like so grateful for that, because I was able to actually go to school.
Yeah, that's great. I'm all for it too.
Yeah, exactly. So like, pre-pandemic was amazing because we could still do that. I think one thing the pandemic did do that like helped me academically was that it kind of gave a break. Because like, as you were saying that like I was very involved in school, right? At a certain point, like I had gotten like too involved. Like I was like kind of burning out and like constantly just like, had to do all these things at the same time as my actual classes. And when the pandemic hit, it kind of like, forced me to not be that involved in school because I couldn't do anything. So it gave me a break, and it actually like kind of made me reassess and be like, you don't have to do all this. Like you can if you want to, but like no one expects this from you. And so that was like a positive aspect of the pandemic, was that it kind of like paused everything, which was nice. Yeah.
Right. Wow. Yeah. What would you say is the most important part of networking as a composer and musician? Like we talked about how you are very social earlier and all of that, but it's such a relation-based industry. Mm-hmm. Like Tell me about the impact of networking, and like what's your life like without and with networking? You know what I mean? Like I really want like the listeners to understand the importance of this, because I think it's something that you do very well. I view you as a very connected person. You were talking about like branching out, leaving the Montreal, going to Chicago. Like I think like you definitely get it. So like, could you impart like that knowledge that you have about networking for us, please?
It's like, I can't stress how important it is. But there's also like the aspect of networking that people have to understand is that like, learn to know what bridges to burn if you have to ever burn bridges, and understand that if ever you're burning a bridge, you're burning it down. Like you will never be able to get that bridge back up. Like, so one really like important lesson that I learned, and like I learned it because someone had like, it was actually my sister, who was also like amazing at networking in her field. She had told me, she's like, not everyone has to like you. Just remember that. Like you don't have to have everyone like you. You just need the people who are important to you like you. That's it. As long as you get those people like you, you will be fine. And there's also this aspect of like, when people like you in networking, like you don't have to be friends with everyone either. Like you have to understand that like it's still a professional relationship, as well as like you can obviously have friendships. Like honestly, we don't meet anyone else to not be able to have friendships together. It's like there's just like, you can't stress the importance enough. Like I feel like I've seen people like when they do their music, they just go to their room, they're like, oh, you know, this is what I'm gonna do, like I want to be like a purist, you know, and I want to just like purely do music. And I'm like, great and all, but like if you want a job like you need to talk to them, because as much as it like, you know, and you could be an introvert, right? Because there are like directors who are introverted, there are producers who are introverted, believe it or not, although, you know, like they are actually some of them, but you need to make the effort to at least say hi, to at least go to these events, to at least remember something, you know, like, because, you know, that's when you can like at least make those connections with those introverted people if you want. And if they see you as introverted and they're introverted, trust me, they're gonna like you, they're gonna want to work with you, because they don't want to work with an extroverted composer. Like,
as an introverted person, I can definitely say it's difficult.
But it's like there's someone for like, you have to realize that there's someone for everyone, you know, like it's not always the same people that you have to go for. There's so many people in this industry. And like one thing that my professor had told us was, when you, first of all, go to events, like just do it, just go to fucking events. But when you go to an event, make an effort to just talk to at least one person. If you get the phone number of one person at the end of the night, then you have successfully networked, at least that night. And
noted.
Another really important thing that I want to like
I got my pen.
It's like, all right, I know what to do now.
I got my pen and paper,
all right, you taking notes? You taking notes? Another really important thing is don't talk about yourself. Just don't.
Oh my gosh. Yes. Thank you for saying that. That is like no, but like coming from a studio background, like so many people just talk about, oh, the beats I make and like, yes, like, yes. Thank you for saying that.
Yeah, don't talk about yourself. Ask questions about them. Like people, when you're friends with someone, right? Like you don't want a friend that constantly talks about themselves. You like having friends that like ask you and then you ask them back. Like it's a conversation that's to be had. They will ask about you if they're interested, you know? And if they don't, then like, fuck it. You know, you could just be like, hey, I really like talking to you. I think you're great. Do you mind if we have coffee? And maybe that second time that we had, you know, like, you know, you exchange numbers, maybe that second time you see each other, they're going to ask more questions about you. Like people are more inclined to work with people when they're just like, oh, this person is like not an obnoxious person, you know? There's this story, actually, if you don't mind me saying.
Go right ahead.
Please.
That my professor had. And I think it's such a good lesson in this. He said that there was one time he was at a networking event with a bunch of composers and this like music editor, like basically the head of the music of a film, let's say, like not music director, but there's this, I think it is music editor. Anyway, so like all these composers were giving their CDs. This was in the time where it's like all physical copies, like CDs to her, like just like being like, oh, I'm a composer. Oh my God, it was so nice to see you. Thank you so much for the talk, and giving them their CD. So she had a pile of CDs in her hand, and my professor goes up to her. Instead of giving her a CD, he has a tote bag. He's like, do you need a bag for all those CDs? I feel like you're like, they're all gonna fall out. And she started laughing and she was like, yeah. And they put all the CDs in the bag and they started talking. And that's how they became friends. And then he started working with her because he was the one person who didn't give her a CD.
Oh my God.
Wow.
Just instead saw a problem, which was the fact that she had too many things in her hands, and decided to be the person to like solve that problem for her. You know, like think outside the box. Try to like, I fucking love that story. Like it's just, it goes to show, you know, like I had a networking event recently with like these student directors and the two of them that I'm working with right now. And like that networking event was specifically because they were looking for composers. So they did actually like talk about their film, and then they said like, oh, you know, like if we could go around the room and like talk to them about us. But it was still very much like the main part of our conversations that I had with these directors was just like, oh shit, like your film is so cool. cool. Like, please tell me more about it. Like, I barely talked about what I did. They actually started asking me about what I did eventually. I was just really interested in their project. You know, that's another thing. Directors love it if you're interested in their project and that you ask them questions about it, because like that's their baby. That's their work of art. So obviously they want to talk about it. So eventually it became like there was this group of directors who were like, hey, we're going for like, you know, dinner after this. You want to come? And I was like, fuck yeah, I'll come with you guys. We went to dinner. I had a friendly time with all of them. Two of them after that had texted me the next day saying, hey, I want to have coffee with you. Let's keep in touch. Had coffee with them, and all of a sudden I'm working for their films.
Yeah,
do you know what I mean? Like, it's like even me just talking about working for their film didn't happen until like the third or fourth time that we met. And like, even like the day that we talked about the films, like Emma is one of them. I love her. She's really cool. We talked about the film for like 20 minutes. I had like a week and a half to write for it, which I was like, fuck. But she talked about her film, talked about it for 20 minutes. And then after that, I was like, okay, we're done business talk right now. Let's just like, how are you? Let's just talk. And we ended up spending like, I think we met at like 5 p.m. or something. I think we ended the night at around like 1 a.m. Like we went out to walk together. We went out for food. We were just like it was just like a fun time. And
that's awesome.
Yeah. And I think it's so important to understand.
Yeah,
it's
for sure.
Like, you are kind of making friends, and even if you don't have to be friends with them, you just go through the effort of getting to know them, and they'll like working with you, and you don't always have to see them either. If it's just one night where you go out and have dinner or whatever, like you never have to see them again unless you're actually working with them. Like it's as
a
easy
natural
as that.
relationship. Like you need to establish a natural relationship with somebody for sure.
Yeah. And it is like one of the only ways you're going to get a job. And I don't want to be like, you know, Debbie Downer about that or anything, but it's the truth. It's like, if you were someone, you have to put yourself in the shoes of the director or the producer. If you were someone who spent years developing a project idea, years of writing a story, years of like just with this one thing, you know, like composers, we don't realize that we work on like several projects at once. Directors usually work on one project for like several years.
Right.
So you got this one thing, and you want to trust someone with your baby to be able to like write for it. The first people you're going to think of are people who you just trust in everyday lives, rather than just go for like the best or whatever.
That makes a lot of sense.
Definitely.
Of course.
Yeah. There's my preach.
That was some good knowledge you dropped on us. Yeah.
For sure.
Next TED Talk. Next question for our TED Talk.
Yeah, absolutely.
Fuck yeah.
I was curious. So like, as a composer, and as many artists have gone through and will go through, how do you handle personal difficulties like self-doubt? Do you ever go through imposter syndrome or anything like that? How do you handle something like that?
Yeah,
for sure. And we all go through that.
I think I think like one of the best things to do is to have a group of friends that you can go to. It actually does help if part of that group of friends is like someone who does the same thing as you, like a composer or something. Just because like when you talk, a good thing to do is to talk to them about it, because a lot of time they understand what you're going through and they can kind of impart, you know, whatever to kind of help you through it. And I found that that has helped me a lot. Another thing is to kind of understand that maybe you need a break, like a very small break. It could be just like a day to yourself. What I like to do, especially in those moments, is to kind of reevaluate what I actually do know instead of focusing on things that I don't know. Like there was actually this conversation I had with my roommate, who is an amazing composer, like so fucking good. Oh gosh. And that was like a moment where I did have a lot of self-doubt and like imposter syndrome and everything. And we had a conversation at like the dinner table where I was like, listen, I don't know why I'm here. I don't know what I'm doing. Like, oh gosh, like, you know, like I feel like I'm the one who sucks the most, or I suck at this, or I suck at that. And I remember her telling me, she's like, dude, like I may be good at this, but literally that other thing that you did the other day was amazing. Like and she started to point out things that she saw in me that I didn't think about anymore. You know, like she started talking about the fact that like that I'm very good with synthesizers, or the fact that like I start thinking outside the box and start experimenting so much. And that she told me, she's like, I can't even think that way. Like I'm like super orchestral. I'm like this. And it kind of makes you realize that like everyone has, like, nobody is good at everything. You're not, you know, like there are obviously obviously like some people maybe in the industry that you really think they're good at everything. Maybe those people have gone through like 40 more years than you have.
Yeah.
So you've got a lot to still learn about. And I think what's really good about these moments, yeah, you look at what you actually know what to do, but also like note down what it is that is making you feel that way. Like, is it the fact that you don't know how to mix properly? Which was my thing, was that, oh God, my mixing is terrible. You know, like, is it the fact that you feel like, I don't know, there's a genre of music that you're not good at or something like that? Write it down, like actually pinpoint what it is. And then after that, go and look for that specific help. Like what I did in the end was that I got a tutor in mixing, and I'm working with him right now, you know, and I've gotten a lot better since I've worked with him, because it's like, you know, I knew it was something that I sucked at. So I was like, shit, I got to get better at this. And working with a tutor on it really helped. And it like teaches you the fact that you are still learning, and that it's okay that like, yeah, like you are still going through this process or this staircase, you know, all the way to the top. That staircase never fucking ends. Just go, keep going.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Would you say that also applies for a writer's block? So when you're going through a writer's block, would that same thing apply? That same concept?
Yeah, I mean, I think like, again, going back to like writer's block, you mean in
I guess in
composition
anything,
or just
but
anything?
let's say your case composition. Oh, I mean, let's say it would be in your case and it would be composition. How would it be the same strategy that you would?
Sort of, because it's less about like going back and seeing what you know how to do, but it's more about going back to like what you like to do instead. So like when I have writer's block, I find that stopping what it is that you're doing, for example, it's, you know, like let's say the writer's block, which has happened to me a bunch of times, is from a cue where like I just don't know how to, you know, like make it make sense basically. Just like improvise musics, or I'll just start writing something that is like just for me. So something that like is something that I like doing. And then going from there to going back to the like writing board, basically. It's like sometimes writer's block also comes from the fact that like you have a due date, or you have an assignment, or you have like something that's in the back of your head. But if you try to go back to something that you think is fun, it sometimes takes away that element. There's also like, you know, generally like taking a break from it. Like maybe it's the fact that you focus too much on it, going to something else. Yeah, like I don't know what else I know that there's something else.
What has been the longest writer's block you've experienced?
Since going to Colombia, you can't really have it for that long, I find. So like I think mine was like a week at most. You know, I think it was for a rewrite too, so I had time to write it. But that was like the longest. Before then, like there were like times where I met like a whole month with a writer's block, and it felt
I can relate
terrible.
to that.
Yeah, but again, like getting out of my comfort zone was what helped. You know, just like doing whatever, or like even like traveling if you can.
Traveling,
it's like a big.
We were
part
talking
of it.
earlier about like when I went to New York. That just opened up so much creativity, and yeah, definitely traveling is a heal. To writer's block.
100%. I agree with that. If you can afford it, or find a way to like make it cheaper, because there are ways to make things cheaper.
Affordable.
Yeah.
Go somewhere for a weekend or something.
Do it.
Change your surroundings.
Road trip. Anthony, we're going on a road trip after the episode.
Don't do drugs. It's what a lot of people go to. It's not going to help, trust me.
Road trip.
It's a different type of trip, yeah.
Yeah, another type of trip. Okay. I want to go. Let's get off this trip and go to another trip. Ask you another question.
Yeah.
Okay. So you obviously have composed a lot of music over the years. I want to know, in a general sense, you know, I'm sure every song is different. It's like your own child. It's unique to itself. But in general, what's your compositional process like? Do you start on the piano? Do you open up a notation software? You know, like what's your general process? And then if you could like explain that for maybe a song or two that you've composed, bleed into that afterwards, I would be really curious to discuss that.
Yeah. No, there is definitely a process. I think one of the things is to create a palette. This was like something that like professor had told me, was that like a painter always gets all their paints on a, you know, like on a physical palette before going to the canvas. So like as composers, why don't we do the same? Like we should actually do that too. And you can always add to your palette later. So creating a palette is definitely something I start with like almost all the time, just deciding like what are the sounds that are going to come in as a general, you know, and then later if I want to add, I can. The second thing that I would do after that would be to improvise with one of the instruments of the palette. Sometimes, a lot of the time, piano is included, or voice at least, and that would be like a way to start with it, would be just like, oh, let me come up with like, is this a thematic thing or is it not a thematic thing? If it's a thematic thing, then I'm definitely gonna be at the drawing board on the piano. I think that's like the easiest way to get thematic material out. If it's non-thematic, then it's like I'll start improvising with one of the instruments, and then having that one improv, I'll take out what I like, and then I'll actually start building a structure from there. And I did that for a lot of things, like for a lot of, you know, just general cues. Even like, you know, I said we had a feature film to compose, and one of the first things that we had to do was actually to create a palette. That was like our first assignment. And like, it was just like, we had to watch the film and then create 3 pieces of music that would not be placed in the film. And we didn't end up using it in the film anyway, but it was just like 3 pieces of music that you think would actually create the sound universe of this film. And that was like super helpful, because it just got me to like think about what I'm going to be using, what kind of tones I'm going to be using, voices or instruments. And then we after that week, we got into actually writing the cues. So our professor did give us like a whole week to just work on the palette of the film, which was great. But I did that with my personal projects too. Like there was like the piece with the bench that I had mentioned before. That one had started out as kind of having, like knowing, okay, I want synthesizers, I know I want voice, I know I want this ukulele with this effect on it, I know I want this. So like I had planned out like what was everything that I was going to use. And then I did start with just like a drone on a synthesizer, and then having my first improv instrument on that. And then from there, it was like I heard everything in my head. I was like, oh, I know this is going to come in and that's what it's going to do. Like I knew exactly how everything was going to like shape up after that. So yeah, definitely palette, improv, then structure. That's kind of what I do.
Palette, improv, structure.
Nice.
Okay, very cool. Very cool.
Yeah.
I think that it's a good organized way. And then can you tell us about some of the pieces that you wrote in that way? Like is there one that's out there on the internet, or one that you are planning on releasing? Just any like piece that you've composed in the past?
There's definitely stuff that I should release at some point. Well, I know that I'm gonna start doing that at some point. I think this winter I'm gonna try to actually write a song, just because I've always wanted to for the longest time, but I never actually did it. So I think eventually I'm gonna get a song out there. Maybe I have like electronic orchestrations, but I didn't release them either. I have like a portfolio page that I actually need to. Yeah, like basically, I am so bad at releasing.
Link will be in the description whenever it comes up.
In 2 years.
Yeah, for sure.
At this point, I am so bad at this. Like I'm like living comfortably in the fact that I'm going to school for this and like not having to get this out there yet. But that's like a really bad attitude to have. So I should.
Yeah, there is a big difference from having to release something and just releasing something because it's your personal project. For sure.
Yeah, exactly. So hopefully. Oh wait, no, actually, Inner Path. That was a short film I worked on. That is exactly what I did. So
let's talk about Inner Path.
Let's
go. For sure.
Okay,
that's while we're here.
Let's get into that, because that was a question I wanted to eventually hit. So this is a perfect transition.
Yeah. So Inner Path is a short animation that was directed by Camille Verreault. Super talented.
Yeah.
It got into the Fantasia Film Festival. It's awesome. It's beautiful animation. Basically, what I had done for that was I literally created a template for that one. So I talked to Camille about like just what kind of sound she wanted, what was the story about, like what was the universe that we were in, and then I said, okay, so next week I'm going to give you 10 different like sounds, basically. So what I did was I loaded 10 instruments onto my, so this project was also like not done with like typical instruments, except for at some point there was like a string. It came in very late, or like a choir, but everything else was instruments that I had patched, basically. So like there were synthesizers, actually mostly synthesizers that I had patched myself. So mixed in maybe with some samples. So I would create these patches. So I think I had 10 or 12 of them. And what I did was I created an audio where it was like patch number 1, and then it would just play a scale and like bang on the keyboard and like whatever. Patch number 2,
nice.
like
That's
for
cool.
all the patches. So she heard all the patches, and she would actually give me feedback on what she thought was good or what she didn't want at all, or what she thought I could work on, and where she wanted it in the film. So from there, I could delete the patches that she didn't want anymore and actually keep the ones that she wanted. And then I came up with the first draft, which, I looked at her notes and I saw, okay, she wants this over here, this over there, which was a lot very directed, which I love. So I had like an initial kind of like pad that was playing and maybe a little bit of a thematic material that was improvised. I sent that to her and I was like, this is not going to be what's in the film, but I just want to know if I'm in the right direction. And she gave me feedback for that. And then from there, I actually went to actually creating a full on like, okay, so this part's going to have this, that part, like every single section, what's going to come in, I think that's like my favorite way of working.
Nice.
And like I did sort of do that with the other two directors I'm working with right now, but since I had less
time. And how long does it typically take?
A lot
from the
less
moment you start thinking about it to the moment you're done the project?
It really depends on deadlines. Like for the ones with the two film students, like I literally did not have time. So I had to be like, okay, I got to start this tomorrow and I got to think about it. And like, I got to send them something halfway through the day. So sometimes I will be doing that. And it's just like focus work basically. But if it was up to me, I would love to have like a week at least to just think about the sound without actually thinking about any themes or anything, just the sound. And then maybe a week on thematic material and some initial drafts. And then from there to work, depending on how long it is, like from there to work on it. So I think the golden rule, I mean, if it's just a short film, like 3 weeks is amazing. Like that's actually more than I could ever ask for. A week and a half is short. I think I even had less than a week and a half, which was the stressful part. And if it is the only thing that I'm working on, then that's actually fine. It's not that bad. But because it's like composers, we generally tend to work on like 6 different projects at once. It's like not the most ideal situation. But I got it out.
Why do we put ourselves in these situations?
Yeah, why?
Good question.
Why would you do this to yourself?
Yeah, why?
Yeah. Nice.
Yeah. It was a really cool experience because it like got me to experiment because of that. But also Camille is such a great, like I need to like see where she is at right now because we haven't gotten in touch since that film, but she's so talented, honestly. And like working with her was so awesome because like she's the type of director that actually gave you freedom to really experiment, and those are the best kind of directors. Those who like actually value experimentation are fucking awesome, and if you find one, hold on to them. They're the best.
Yeah.
Describe to us the relationship of a composer to a director and like professionally when you work on a spotting session and everything. Like what are some important things to consider? Everything. Like I really want to get into that aspect. I think it's since we're talking all about film music, it's something that we should definitely delve into a little bit.
One thing to consider about this relationship is that even if a film director knows about music or is a musician or whatever, it's actually so much better if they don't know anything about music, because like they might say things when they don't mean it, and they might try to impress you with that, which I found is like a big thing with directors sometimes. Another thing to consider is remember that this is not your personal project. This is their project that you are working on, because like sometimes we really want to put in an idea, and it's fine to do that, by the way, especially in the first stages, to really go out and like be like, oh, I'm gonna try this, whatever. But like when the director gives you feedback, like take that feedback. And like I don't want to say like just like put your head down and whatever. Like you can always kind of like try to, I'm not gonna say argue, but like try to discuss an idea if you think that there's something that you really do think is better, or you think that maybe music shouldn't be in a scene, because sometimes that's also the case, like then like definitely bring those things up and definitely try to talk about it in a way that's not argumentative, and not in a way that's like, no, you're wrong, I'm right. Exactly. So, but I think it is important to like, also talk about our opinions, and they do value our opinions a lot of the time. Also remember that the director is just as scared of releasing the film. So like, A lot of the time, sometimes it's just about giving them that confidence in your idea. Like sometimes it is like, trust me, you know, like this will make your scene better, or this will work with the scene. You know, it will tell this story that you're trying to tell. And I think this, like, it's using that kind of communication instead of being like, you're wrong, I'm right. It's like, this piece of music tells this kind of story. Like, is that the story that you want to tell, or is this the story you want to tell? You know, like try to be a little bit more ambiguous in your language in terms of like, don't talk about anything music, talk about, you know, other stuff like musically, like like storytelling wise, theatrically, what does it mean? Emotionally, what does it mean? Another thing to consider is like, get to understand people's communications, because like everyone has a different way of communicating an idea. That is one of the hardest things for me, especially. So these two film directors I worked with, it was their first time working with a composer. They're also master students in film, by the way. Previously, I don't know why film departments like all over the world somehow do this, but they don't like work with composers as much for some fucking reason until they're doing their masters. Like, it's really stupid. But anyways, it was their first time working with composers. And I remember telling them, okay, I just want you to know you don't have to think about my feelings. And I think that's so important, because a director sometimes will like you a lot and they'll try to like not hurt your feelings by giving you feedback. But fuck that. Like, honestly, let them hurt your feelings. It's okay. Be separate from it. It doesn't matter, because there's nothing worse than a director like tiptoeing around what they actually mean and then you going back to rewriting it over and over and over again because the communication was wrong in the first place. The communication has to be strong between you two, and you have to make it super clear to the director, especially if it's their first time, that like, look, you gotta tell me what you mean. Ask questions during the spotting session. Holy shit, it's important to ask all the questions you can. Do it. Because again, you don't want to go and like write something for hours and then come back and it's like so wrong, you know, like you want to understand what the hell it is they mean. And I learned that lesson like really late. Like, I used to just like write notes and be like, yeah, okay, cool, I'll get this done. Yeah. Like, thinking of my interpretation of it. Like, it wasn't until later that I was like, shit, like I'm not getting this. And I started to actually ask like, okay, but what do you mean by that? Like, do you mean this or do you mean that? Like, I started to really pry on like what it is they're trying to ask from me. And that really helped, because then I was like, oh, okay, so you really want that, you know, like, or you really don't want that. Like, ask questions. Communication. It's just like the number one thing that's so important working with a director, is being a good communicator and forcing them to communicate good too.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Of course.
Fucking love him. We're all a bunch of nerds at the end of the day.
How do you handle like the financial side of your business?
Work a lot, but also that's another thing that you have to be aware of. This industry is very expensive. If like, you got to be resourceful. For example, for a really long time, I didn't have proper speakers. Actually, I still don't have proper monitors, honestly, but I have better headphones now. But at the beginning, my headphones were broken and I didn't get new headphones for a while. And I didn't have like all the instruments I needed, like the sound libraries I needed. So I would spend a lot of time at school and I just used the school facilities to do my projects. And I had this whole system, the filing system, to make sure that I could still work on it back home. I would export stems like there was no tomorrow. Like, I kept exporting stems after each session.
I know exactly what you mean. Spending hours on stems.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's important to understand that like, you're not going to have everything, because like there's no one who has everything except for those who are really up there in the industry because they have the fucking money. But like, you can make do by using your resources. If you have a school, go to the fucking studios, use it. Like, you need that shit. You know, if you have a friend that can help you out, go to your friend's place, or like try to help, like get them to like lend you something. Start becoming thrifty, or start becoming like very DIY about stuff. Like, if you don't have the proper sound isolation, get yourself in a closet, record yourself in there, get a microphone that is pretty universal. I've done so much shit with my SM58 with a blanket around me and like all of these like clothes just like stacked around me. like using like this like makeshift isolation booth. Like it's just like you don't have to necessarily pay for everything. It's a lot harder, yes, but like once you start to learn how to do certain things, like how to get around not having certain materials, at the end of the day, you're just working to get those materials eventually. And like what I do is I make sure that those materials are definitely something I need. Like for now, I have my PC. I know that eventually I'm going to need like a Mac because I really do want to use Logic, and I want to be able to like process my works a lot easier. I find that PC is great and all, but like it has some difficulties that I go through. So I'm like, all right, do I need a Mac right now? No, I don't. So what am I going to do? I'm going to wait until I like next year, for example, my second year, when I know I'm going to actually have to start using it like for real, or then I'm going to get a Mac.
Right.
Or
but be careful with that. Be careful
and
with
also
that,
like
have you used Mac before
course.
in the past, or?
Yeah, those are the ones I use at school.
Okay, because like I remember starting at Concordia, I bought my first Mac there. That's the first time I ever used a Mac, and I had to learn the whole program, the Mac system on top of the program. So like, just be careful with that. But if you're already used to it, then of course, go for it.
Yeah, it's like it's all we have at our school is Mac. So like that's also the thing is I use a PC at home. Everyone else has a Mac, and I'm just like fuck all y'all. But like same thing with software, right? Like you don't have to buy every update of a software. Like really be sure. Like I have Cubase 10.5, I think. Oh yeah. I have Cubase 10.5 right now. There's Cubase 11 that's out. The school has Cubase 11, so I'll sometimes use their Cubase 11. But I'm not gonna fucking buy Cubase 11. I know that their update is coming. Cubase 12 is coming at some point in 2022. So I'm just gonna wait. I'm just gonna wait it out and be like, that's when I'm actually gonna buy the update. I'm not gonna fucking buy 11 and then 12 and then like keep going that way. It's not sustainable. So you have to be smart. You have to as someone had told me before, and I totally didn't listen, when you get your tattoo, you need to be sure you want that tattoo for a whole year before you get it, which like I knew I wanted my tattoo 2 days before, so
take your own advice.
But when it comes to music, software, all that stuff, don't just make rash decisions. Or if you do it on like Boxing Day or Black Friday or something.
I made a lot of rash decisions on Boxing Day.
This episode is brought to you in part by Black Friday.
And Boxing Day.
And Boxing Day.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, we talked a little bit about what DAW you used and everything. I kind of want to talk about media that has influenced you. What are some video games and movie soundtracks, just film music in general, that has influenced your compositions? Like, is there anything that you listen to, you're like, oh, I want to compose an arpeggio like that? Or like, how does it even influence you?
100%. There's actually like Hildegard and Daughter's The Joker. That was like a huge influence just because like the way she composes was just like a few notes, but like attention to detail in the minimalism in it was fucking awesome. But also like, her use of sound design, like electroacoustic elements, as well as like what we used in a typical score. I just like fucking love her stuff. And she's a huge influence on my work. I think like another influence is there are two composers, Sonia Belisuva and Giona Ostinelli are the two composers that worked on the first season of the Witcher series, and I thought that score was amazing. I thought it was awesome. Definitely a huge influence. I mostly read about how Sonia had like she was like buying instruments and just playing them, and then she would record them, and that's like, yep, that's gonna stay in there, or like that's an instrument I want. So her way of like just like adding, like experimenting with different things, playing it herself, and then having that in the score is really awesome. And that is also like a big influence in what I do, because I tend to do that a lot. I tend to buy too many instruments for my own good. So definitely the Witcher series, which the Netflix series, sorry, I should specify. Hildegard and Daughter. There was like I guess when I was a kid, it's less of an influence. It's more just like, it's what made me want to go into music was Lord of the Rings.
Lord of the Rings.
Because the music is just perfect and epic in every way.
I never saw the Lord of the Rings.
Oh my god, no! Why?
No way.
Yeah, I know.
Why?
Literally, man, you're missing out.
Yeah,
it's the 20th anniversary now too, so there's no better time than now.
Maybe for the 30th.
No! Get on that shit!
Oh, wow.
Anyway. Yeah, like I guess those are like some of the biggest influences. I really like playing indie games, like just random indie games, and then listening to those scores, and I can't really point any of them out necessarily because, like, you know, a lot of indie games you kind of play like within a week or so, or even less sometimes, but those like have a huge impact. Just the way that the experience is so well made, definitely like one of the biggest influences in the kind of experience that I want to make. There's definitely like an epic side to me. Like I really want to do like, you know, shit like Skyrim and stuff like that. But I don't know. Like I think it's fun, but I don't know if that's where I'm going to end up. Honestly, I have yet to see what's going to happen in the future. I think synthesizers are bigger in my life right now.
Right.
And like listening to scores with synthesizers are a lot more influential on what I do at this point, which is mostly actually like singer-songwriters and pop artists. But yeah, definitely.
Nice. What are a few genres that you've been enjoying composing lately?
So again, definitely synthesizers.
Yeah, synthesizers. Yeah, I know we just covered it.
Any kind of synth stuff. Because it's so like it has such a nostalgic sound to it, but at the same time, you can make it like your own because you can make your own synth patches, right? So it's something that is so nostalgic, but at the same time can like change forever and has this whole world to it. It's like so versatile. It's you know, especially now that we have like, I mean, I have a few physical ones, a couple actually, just two of them. Even just the fact that we get to have like, you know, the shit, I'm like forgetting my words, like VSTs that are synthesizers.
Yeah.
So non-physical ones, digital, there you go, digital synthesizers. You can have like a really good sound library of a violin or whatever, but it's never going to sound like the real thing.
No.
But like a digital synthesizer is going to sound pretty close or like exactly like the real thing. So that to me is amazing, is the fact that like it's one of the best ways to experiment, and it's one of the best ways to just get your shit out there. Yeah, so that's one of the big ones. Another one is I like sampling my own stuff, so like any kind of experimental things. I recently found out that through Columbia I love doing horror film stuff.
Horror is great.
Yeah,
so much fun.
It is, and I didn't think I would have this much fun with it. And it's just so playful. Our last assignment was to do a quartet of like jingle bells. Oh, not jingle bells, any like Christmas or holiday song. I did the jingle bells, but I did like it's called I'm scared of the jingle bells, and it's like,
no way. Did you like drop everything to minor or?
It's so not only does it drop to minor at the beginning, it's like pizzicato at one point. It's a marcato, so they're hitting the strings, and
oh my god,
it goes from like a major, like the regular major, and then going down like semitones, like
that's so ominous.
And then it's
I love it.
Super and like layering semitones on semitones. It was so out there, and I was just like, this is great. Like this is the shit I like to do, you know.
That is so cool.
Like a string quartet of my nightmares. Yeah, pretty much. Those are like the two big things.
That's fun stuff.
Yeah.
We have a few more questions and then some rap fire ones, but we still have a bit of a ways to go here. I have wanted to ask you, once you finish your master's, or maybe during your summer break when you don't have an internship, whenever you have time, basically, what are some personal projects that you would like to do?
So not music related, right? Or
music or not, anything, or not, honestly.
Yeah. Okay, because I actually have something non-music related that I'm going to do in the summer, because it's the only time in my life that I'm going to have this happen to me.
Oh, nice.
Tell us about it.
It is a journey that I'm going to go on with my roommate. I don't know if you know El Camino de Santiago. It's an 800-kilometer trail in Europe. You walk from France to Spain. Obviously, you're not walking all day. Like, you're walking, for half the day and then resting for the rest of the half. But it's about a 40-day walk.
Oh, my God.
And I'm going to do that this summer. Hopefully, if the pandemic doesn't completely eat us alive.
Jesus. I pray for your legs and your ankles.
So I'm actually very used to walking a lot. My roommate less so I told her she has to start training as of now, and I'm probably gonna actually start training too with a backpack on my back on a treadmill, because I love, like, as you know by now, I love traveling, but I also love challenging myself with like these really big physical exertion challenges. So this is definitely like a big thing that I'm going to be working towards in the summer. And I love doing that, like getting away from music.
I'm looking at it right now. It looks so intense. It's asking me to book a trip.
I'm so excited. And we're going to be like backpacking around Europe for a couple of weeks before the trail, because I also want to see a little bit more of Europe, and I want to show her basically how to walk, because like honestly my roommate needs help. God, if she listens to this, she's going to kill me. But yeah, we're going to be backpacking. So that's like a big, this is like a big thing that I do a lot. I actually travel a lot, and getting away from music helps me so much, because like, again, you fill your head with it, and just traveling and listening to other sounds and other music and like seeing other worlds really helps you kind of like let your brain kind of bake, basically, like it's cooking itself for the next time you go in front of a computer, in front of an instrument, then you start like coming up with new shit. So that's like a big thing that I'm working towards. Other than that, like music wise, I really do want to eventually write an album of some sort. I don't know what direction I want to take it. I just know that I want to do at least one in my life. It's like a, like a bucket list thing for me. And like I keep, saving, like I have a playlist on Spotify where I save music where it's like inspiration, basically, because it's like music that I think I'm gonna kind of like the genres I might be going towards. Not entirely sure yet, but sometimes I'll listen to that and I'll start thinking like, oh, maybe I should like write this or write that. But I'm in no rush for it. So if it happens within the year, great. If it doesn't, then whatever. Doesn't matter. It'll come eventually at some point in my life. So yeah, those are like the two things.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow, that's ambitious.
Which one,
Very
the walk
cool.
or the album?
Wow, both.
But
You're gonna write an album on the walk.
Maybe actually that might be what I need.
Just write the album on the walk.
Yeah.
Why not?
It's a lot of time. It's 40 days.
Yikes.
Yeah. Plenty of time. Just bring a laptop, Cubase till 12 by that time, and
I
just,
think you just need like a pen and paper, right, to write lyrics, because at least you need like some kind of it's good.
Yeah.
It's fine. Yeah.
Right.
Nice. And what about right now? Is there anything that you're working on? Any short films that you're currently working on?
I am working on 2 student short films called The Box. One of them is called The Box, and one of them is called Bang. I should get the names of the people. So Bang, I'll start with that one. Bang is by Emma Masaryk. She's a first year in the master's program, just like me, in film at Columbia. The short is basically like about a girl who is broken up with and cuts her bangs. That's why it's called Bang. It's a very I find it's a very sweet. It's really cool because it's very pink. Like everything visually is very retro.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. So she really wanted me to work on it because of synthesizers. So it's a huge heavy synthesized score, and it's awesome because of that. Awesome. It's just just herself. Oh, it's freaking great. I love it. The second one that I'm working on is hilarious. The thing about this director is that he actually writes at the end of his credits written and directed. Like he doesn't written and directed by him. He just writes written and directed, and it's his own personal joke. Oh, no. He's funny. Okay, so I'm working on The Box, which is by Benjamin Sepinuk. He's also a first year at Columbia College in the MFA film. His short film is a trip. It's also very synth heavy. They're both friends, if you can find that out from, they both like synthesizers. So this one is about someone who is trying to put a letter into a letterbox, but we don't know what's in the letter. But for some reason, it's like he can't do it, and every time he goes close to it, it's like he hits the trash can. He's like, fuck, he just can't do it. And then when he finally gets the letter into the letterbox and he walks away, he runs back and he beats up the letterbox because he wants the letter back. But we don't know what the letter is. So it's just it's only one shot, it's only one take, there are no cuts in it, and it's hilarious. It's so good. And yeah, it's this someone who's going insane from not being able to post this letter because we just don't know what the fuck is wrong with this.
That's
amazing. Really good. It's so fun. So those are 2 short films that I'm working on right now. I don't know if there's gonna they told me they might be working on another short film.
Right. When are they set to release?
So that's a good question because I still have to do my final rewrites for those. So I think they're waiting on me.
Come on, Neusha.
Sometime in the next coming.
No. I'm gonna do it definitely by this winter break. So I think it's just I need to actually sit down and do it. They're in no rush, but I think at least in the coming 2022, at the beginning of 2022, it'll come out. So I'm excited. I'm excited to see what's gonna come of this.
Nice. So are we.
Nice. So by the time this episode's out, it's
probably
out now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Okay, I want to ask you about, we talked about like struggles such as imposter syndrome and writer's block and everything else, but more on the tech side of things. Tell us about the importance and the struggles you've had with file management, because prior to recording, you kind of made a fuss of it. You kind of said, like, we got to talk about this a little bit. And I don't know where this question is going to lead. It's kind of thrown in there at the end. So go ahead.
Oh my God. Organize your files and come up with a naming scheme, please. It's so... The amount of times, I think it's because I've never had to do this many rewrites and never had to do this big of a project scale. But like, now I have big projects. I have so many rewrites. Like, it's so important to be able to find your files, but also to be able to rewrite your stuff. Like, if you exported something and like you need to go and find that instrument because, like, I don't know, the third time you met with a director, they just realized that cello or whatever is like just like an octave too low, or I don't know, that it's like too present or to this or to that. If you can't find that cello, you are so screwed. Like, you gotta find a new way to basically like magic your way out of it. It really is that. Like, and I had to do that because there was like cues I had written at the beginning of the semester that I didn't have to rewrite a certain thing until the very end. I think it's like in between those two, there's like 10 weeks. So, and like I got better and better at managing my files after that. So it got a lot easier to rewrite some stuff. That fucking piece from 10 weeks ago, I went back to it, legitimately had to just like cut out a part, rewrite, and like do a crossfade thing and try to mask it to make it seem like I didn't just like, do a collage basically, because I couldn't find it. I couldn't find the file. I couldn't find the original, stems. I couldn't find like the original instrument anymore. And by the way, Cubase, sometimes or like not just Cubase, any kind of DAW, sometimes, you think you have something saved, like a patch saved or whatever. If it's not there, it's not there. Like, if you don't name it properly, if you just name it like scratchy sound, that's not good. That's not good enough. Like, you're not going to find it to replace it. And like, I had so many of those problems. So like, I can't stress enough how important it is to have a file management, because like, it's so easy to lose things. And sometimes you will have to go back 10 weeks later or more to a project and you're not going to fucking find it. So don't be like me. Don't do that, please. Make your lives easier by having a good file system and naming system and just everything system, export system, everything.
Oh man.
That's what I gotta say about that, because I went through it. Fuck.
I know what you mean. I back up everything on a hard drive. I have a Google Drive that I back up to. I have a second hard drive that I back up to. And it's like essential. It's not even like for fun.
Oh yeah. If you don't have something in two places, it's like you don't have it at all. It just doesn't exist.
3 places, because you never know if you're back up.
Oh my God.
Right. That's true. Okay, now we're getting into the. I'm saying at least 2 places. I do also have things in like several. I think I have one thing that's in like 2 cloud backups and like 2 physical storage.
Yeah, actually, I'm pretty bad with that. Like, I only have 1 backup.
Oh my God.
I don't know how you do that. There's great options like Google Drive, and you can like, I have like a monthly thing for like 200 gigs. It's like not even $4, and my most important stuff goes up there, and it's a great way to Anthony and I like pitch files to one another using it. So it's
so cheap and so useful.
So
I think I recently bought 10 terabytes on Google Drive. I was like, fuck it, I need that.
Yeah, you need it. You need it.
Yeah,
on top of a physical copy.
Yeah, exactly. And clean up your drive. Like, I'm going through a major cleanup right now. I'm going through all of my, actually seeing what I need to keep and stuff. So definitely clean up your drives.
Yeah. One thing is super important, like just putting everything in folders and like subfolders and subfolders and
subfolders. Oh my God, yes. And that also was a hard lesson to learn.
Yeah, just
I fucked up.
In general, keeping everything organized and easy to see, easy to find. Yeah. I learned that the hard way.
Definitely.
So Neusha, coming from somebody who has lived in Montreal and is now currently in Chicago, what would you say is the biggest contrast in the music scene between the two?
Yeah.
What differences do you see as a composer?
Definitely Montreal is much more experimental and is a lot more open to experimental music. A lot of electroacoustic works come from Montreal, which is amazing. A lot of like northern influences too. Like we have a lot of like, Montrealers are quite used to listening to like Scandinavian voices or like using those in random projects, or like we have a lot of influences that are like Irish influences as well in Canadian music and all that stuff. So like there's a lot of a northern feel, like almost like a colder feel to it. Very experimental, very texture oriented. oriented. Chicago, like I never thought that American music could sound so different, but it really does. Like it's a lot more, you know, influenced by pop and jazz, and like there's so much more jazz in Chicago.
Oh, yeah.
Like
jazz in Chicago,
it's insane. It's so good.
That's where it's at.
Yeah, like I would actually recommend anyone to go to Chicago. Go to the Green Mill. It's where Al Capone like had his own booth over there. Like it's amazing. The jazz over there is awesome.
Wow.
Also like great cocktails. No, yeah, like people are much more influenced by jazz, much more influenced by like rock music and like Americana music. So even like composing, you know, like when I had to write music for like the feature, a lot of it was Americana, and I had to learn about that because I was like, I don't fucking know how to do this. Like I would add in like an Irish flair or like an experimental thing, and the director was like, I don't know, like I don't know if I'm really, you know, into this kind of thing. So
I'm sure it could be like an advantage though. Like you kind of have an upper hand. You have a different approach to it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that is something that is like an advantage, and I think a lot of international students, it's like it's both a pro and a con. A con because it's like we have to learn a whole other music language that we don't know.
But once you learn it, you have
exactly
a huge upper hand.
Yeah, exactly. That's the thing. It's like you have that extra element to you too, which I'm really grateful for also. But yeah, no, it's so different. It's like it's almost like American music is closer to perfection in music. And I'm you know, I'm not saying this in like there is perfection in music, but whatever perfection can sound like, taking away the edges of something and making it more round or whatever. And then Montreal has more of an edge to it. It's like that rebellious teenage, you know, that's like, I'm listening to fucking like Brian Eno,
it's not
Mom.
a phase, Mom.
You don't understand. That's like the big difference between the two, definitely.
Okay.
Yeah.
I see now. Oh wow, I love Brian Eno. He makes good music, honestly.
Oh, I love it.
I
yeah,
can listen to some
fucking
good
A
music
for like an hour.
Yeah, easily. Like at least an hour. You know, you can't listen to 2 minutes of it.
But that's what I'm saying. An hour is like one piece, right? No. It's not even like like one piece of music is an hour.
Absolutely.
Fucking A, yeah.
Yeah, very true. No,
I love it.
Okay, yeah, for sure. And we kind of hit all the big questions. I kind of wanted to just like rapid fire ask you a couple of things here, and then we'll slowly wrap things up. You talked about Cubase. Is that the only DAW you use?
It's the primary DAW I'll use. I will, I haven't used Reaper for a while, but from time to time I'll go back to it. I also do like Ableton Live. I know that it gets a lot of flack or whatever, but honestly, it's a great fucking DAW to experiment on. So yeah, Ableton Live is always going to have a special place in my heart. But Cubase is definitely the main one.
Right on. What about notation software? MuseScore, Sibelius, what's your poison?
My poison's Dorico, although I still have problems.
Oh, I don't know Dorico.
Dorico is the Steinberg, so it's the same company as Cubase. I'm still learning to really get like good with it, I guess, and it does piss me off from time to time, but it's good. It is very, very good. Like I can't shit on it too much. It's actually very good. Dorico.
Okay, very cool. Is it just? I'm looking at it right now. Like what's so appealing about it?
The user interface is really nice. It's really easy to like. It's very you know when it's like easy to use, like it's almost like second nature. Like it's easy to understand. It can also it's user friendly. It can do a lot of things too. It's great because you can put a film. I don't really use it for that, but I think it's a great feature. You can import a film and it'll actually like sync with your film. So you can write in music that will like actually sync with the cue. So I think that's a really cool aspect of it too.
Nice.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Okay, what about go-to gear such as MIDI keyboards, interfaces? You talked about doing a lot of DIY. So I mean, I'm curious, what do you use usually gear-wise?
DIY, I'll use a lot of clothing and carpets and closets. Sometimes like foam and stuff like random foam. I'll use that. But my go-to gear, like I'm a sucker for Arturia. I think that I just love their keyboards. I love their synthesizers. I have the Micro Freak back home. I also have like the small keyboard, the Keystep, I think it's called. But I am thinking of upgrading to the 88 eventually. Yeah, it's great. I fucking love it. And I really want the 88 eventually. I think it's great. I think it's I think it feels nice. As a pianist, Arturia feels really nice. The other go-to, the SM58 is always what I like tell everyone to get who wants to record anything, because I'm just like, if you don't have any money, but you want the most versatile microphone that you can do stuff on, and you don't have great sound isolation or whatever, like SM58 is my go-to to record absolutely anything. For any beginner, it's also like indestructible. You could throw it into a volcano and it probably wouldn't melt.
Yeah,
Like,
it's so versatile and strong.
It's crazy. Like, it's sure, like, it won't get like that very specific thing you will get with other microphones, but as a general, it's the best. So yeah, SM58, can't rave enough about that. I have a Focusrite as a audio interface, sorry. I haven't done it with anything else. I've used like the Motu before and the Apollo as well before, but I don't know, something about the Focusrite. Maybe I'm like biased because it's my first one. I just never want to do anything else, with any other like audio interface. I just think it's great. What is it called? Their customer service is also amazing. It's really easy to get in touch with them. So yeah, Focusrite. Fuck nice. Yeah. Thank you. Nice. Yeah. Otherwise, all my DIYs are mostly like are mostly just like space DIYs. So it's just figuring out like how to get your space together, or like how to get a specific reverb that you can't recording environments. Yeah, exactly. Start like getting in touch with the spaces that you're in. Do the clap technique. I don't know if you guys probably know about this, but I don't know if the listeners know. You should like clap in every corner of your room and see where if there's too much resonance in a certain space, or and try to isolate that, or like try to stop that resonance from happening. Yeah, clap test, man. Clap test.
It's so funny seeing musicians walk into a room. It's just so funny when you see a musician walking into the room. You already know it. They start clapping.
They're just like clapping. It's very resonant over here. Oh my god. Yeah, I know. It's fucking hilarious. We look like idiots.
Yeah, a question you've never been asked before, I'm sure. Go to sound libraries.
Definitely the Arturia synth collection. Get on that shit. It's the best. Can't rave about it enough. Spitfire has a lot of good sound libraries, but if you have the money, like honestly, one thing that I would recommend is like Piano Book. It has a bunch of like free. Well, I actually like Spitfire also. I think Labs has free stuff too. Like the Labs take advantage of that. But also, Piano Book has a bunch of it's great. And like so Piano Book has a bunch of free sound libraries that are made by like virtual instruments that are made by the community at large. So like that's also a really cool way to find like really odd instruments and like go ahead and experiment with those. Like they're very fun to experiment with. So those are like my biggest places that I go to, and definitely get the effect rack or the bundle from Sound Toys, because it is the best, and Isotope of course, but like Sound Toys fucking awesome.
Yes, very cool. At the very beginning, we mentioned that you had a large background in deep listening practices, theater and acting, directing, all that stuff. Do you guys just want to, like, stepping away from music specifically, do you want to just like talk about a little bit of what you've done in those practices?
I think deep listening is a lot about like it's a very meditative practice, and it kind of goes into theater as well, like as in that meditation aspect of it. Right. Like I've done a few workshops with deep listening. I've led a couple of workshops with it, and it always has been like that whole like meditation and like listening to your space. And one thing that I do actually, even like in my everyday life, that's a deep listening practice, is sometimes I'll like walk in the street and I'll try to pinpoint different sounds. And if there's like a car, let's say it's a car that I'm pinpointing, I'll try to see how far it can get away from me before I stop hearing it. And I'll try to see if I can like emulate that sound even if I can't hear it anymore. So it's like a really fun practice that I like to do. It's awesome. It's a really good practice too. It helps you like actually like be able to listen to details like really closely. In terms of theater, acting, and directing, I haven't done anything in a long time since I kind of like left that side of me. But yeah, like I remember I used to do like a couple shows. I would like start, I started composing for those shows too. Acting and directing definitely like kind of shaped me as a storyteller. And I think it's something that can be like brought into other things in your life, like being able to network, for example. example, you know, getting outside of your comfort zone, or also like writing music that you understand like how the storytelling is done in a film or in a show or whatever, and then translating that into sound as well. I really thought it was something that I wanted to do in my life. I still think there's part of me that is like open to it. Like I don't think I'm completely, you know, closing the door to theater, like in acting and directing, but I think that I'm at a point in my life where it's like, it's not the first thing I'm gonna go to. It was definitely fun, and I think there's something to be said about being able to kind of like escape into another world and escape into like another person. You know, like basically when you play a character, it's almost like you're meeting someone without actually having to talk to them. So it's kind of like a really cool way to get into someone else's psyche. But yeah, it's a lot of work. It's you know, like it's a lot of time and effort, and I think it's amazing in terms of like getting yourself out there and getting yourself to kind of get out of your you know, mind for a second and like into someone else's mind or into another world entirely. But I'm glad that that's in my past. I'm glad that music is now the thing that I do. But it definitely has helped. It's definitely like got me to be better at communicating with directors.
Right,
100%.
for sure.
Yeah, definitely. I this was kind of like a question that I wanted to slide in when we were talking about your education and everything, but I left it here just because it kind of just relates to networking, which was another point we discussed. In Concordia, in the music department, there was a lot of collaborations between the different programs, and all being on the same floor, there was a lot of camaraderie. Like, as I said, do you feel like you have the same over in Chicago? Like, do you get to collaborate with other programs a lot in different departments?
We definitely, like, the music students are with the music students. So, like, you know, I have all the undergrads in the same building as the grad students. So, like, collaboration within the department itself, within just the music department, like, it's super well, like, kind of like it's right there, right? Like, I have like walked out of the mixing room basically and like seen an undergrad that was, I don't know, like a singer or whatever, and I was like, hey, you come here, I need you. And I just used them in a piece. You are
communicate with me.
But it's gotten me a lot of like networking things with performers, which is awesome. In terms of like other programs, we're in different buildings, but what I think is different from Concordia and Columbia College is that there is much more effort from the departments themselves to get us to work together. So like I'm working with people from the film department, but we have like people come into our classes all the time from those departments, from video game, film, you know, TV, that come into our classes and are like, hey, we're actually looking for a sound person and a music person, and this is our pitch, and they pitch their projects to us. And that happens like quite often within the year. I would say it's actually kind of easier collabing with other programs just because of the fact that I think people are more open to collaborating and need to collaborate. There was almost like in Concordia, there was less of a sense of like actually needing it. Over here, it's like they want you, like for sure. They're like, please, we're looking for someone. And you're like, all right. Yeah.
Very cool.
Basically.
Very cool. Okay, cool. Neusha, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
That was such a great conversation. We really I feel like we covered everything. We do have a final question to ask you, a tradition on the podcast. But was there anything else you kind of just wanted to leave us on before? Is there any like a topic, anything else that we didn't ask? Or I feel like we covered basically your entire life here. It was very, very complete. But,
oh my God. Sorry for talking so much, by the way. I feel like we've been, like,
you're on a podcast. That's the whole point. That's the whole it's the whole point. Yeah. You did great. You did so good. Yeah. Okay. Anthony, I think it's time for
I mean, before we get to that, I just kind of wanted to maybe ask you, what has been your favorite part of all this, like in general, whether it's compositionally or academically or just in general, what has been your favorite part?
Honestly, like meeting people and just...
I knew she was going to say that.
I kind of figured too. I was just
social. You're such a social butterfly. I was like, she's going to say...
No, but you know what? There's something to be said about like going to a totally different place where you don't know anyone and you have to start your friend circle from zero.
Yeah, that's scary, but it's special.
It is. Yeah, it's both what you said. It's scary and special. And you will not find friends for the first like month or two. You will be very lonely. But eventually when you finally get that circle and you start to become really good at making friends everywhere. And it's just like, it's so cool. Like I think that's my favorite part.
And I'm sure that not having a language barrier makes it easier for you.
Yeah, there's still like, for some reason, my French accent comes out in the States, and I start to think in French, which is really stupid because I think it's my brain being so intimidated. It like resorts back to French. But eventually when I get over that, there's 100% not a language.
Yo, I've caught myself just like saying, oh, allez-y, or oh, excuse-moi, just like when I was in the US. It's like, oh, fuck.
I don't know why. Why is this like a phenomenon that happens with Montrealers? Are we just like afraid of like the Americans? So we're just like, oh, we're so sorry. We're actually not from here. We're French.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Yeah. So we kind of created a little tradition here on Soundspace. So we like to ask our guests one final question. And my question to you is, what is your advice to people who want to get into the space of sound?
All right. My advice is don't think about anyone else, because when we start thinking about like, oh my God, I can't do this because of, I don't know, XYZ, like this person is like that or this person's like this. Like if ever that comes to your head, just remember that that person that you're thinking of, let's say for me, it would be like Hildur Guðnadóttir or someone a little bit less, like let's say David Bowie, right? You look at David Bowie and you're like, oh my God, like I'm never going to be like him. Like, I'm never going to be the next David Bowie or whatever. First of all, you don't have to be, because you don't need two of the same people. But also just remember that David Bowie or anyone, like you can change his name to anyone in this situation, started out as a person who was in the same shoes as you and who did not know anything about music. Like everyone in this world of sound and space starts out not knowing anything, and like the whole point of it is that you just have to take that first step and just do it. Like there's no one who's going to be able to stop you, and you can't constantly think of like, oh my God, I'm not there yet. Like whatever, this is one of the fields in any fucking career that the more you're in it, the better you get. There's like, you don't get worse.
It's just another chapter in your story.
Exactly. So just keep thinking about that. There's no getting worse at it. You're always going to get better. So just think about like, okay, I have a shit ton of time until I die, hopefully. So I'm going to use that time to just like experiment and get better at it. And like, I have met so many people in this industry who are so much older than me. And I have also met people who are a lot more accomplished and they're younger than me too. There's just so much, like so many different people out there, and there's so much gap between everyone, but like nobody cares. At the end of the day, it's not about like, oh my God, I'm gonna like race against them or whatever, or like, there's like there's this like marathon in life that I have to get to the end of and I need to be before them or whatever. No, like the only person that you have to get better than is yourself. Nobody else. You don't need to be better than the next person, because you're gonna focus half of your energy on that person and on how to try to get better than them. Yeah, you need that 100% of energy on you, and that's who you need to get better than, always and forever.
Well said. So, yeah. Very well said.
So that's like my advice.
Moment.
Fucking go for it, man. do it. Just because. Just do it. Fucking Shia LaBeouf. Honestly, though. Yeah.
Oh man.
That's my
okay.
advice.
Great. Where can people find you online if they wanted to follow you? What's your website? What's your social media?
Honestly, okay, so I would say I do have a music Instagram. I don't update it very often. So if you want to, you can follow me at Neusha Music. It's just one word. Like you can go ahead and follow me on there. I cannot guarantee that you're going to see much, although I'm going to try. So if you do follow me, if I see more people following me in there, maybe I'll like be like, oh shit, I should probably update it. But if you do follow me on like my personal Instagram, which like to me, personal and like my work Instagram is kind of the same thing. I don't really care. Like at Neuschmeister.
Nice.
Which like
nice.
You can figure out how to spell that out. If you look up my name, you're gonna find it. I'll sometimes post music stuff on there too, even just in the stories. So that's like one of the best ways to keep in touch or to keep up. Otherwise, just like, eventually I'll be out there in the world, but I'm very comfortable staying in the shadows for now. I don't know why. It's a horrible habit. I need to get out of it.
Very cool. But you also, when I was doing research, you're also on this website called twine.net. Like, I never saw that website. So maybe I'll make an account on that. So
yeah, that's true.
You can find her over there too if you want to hire her.
You can.
So
you can find me on twine.net. You can. Yeah, you can get in touch with me through all these things. Like, whatever.
Perfect. Everything will be linked in the description. Anthony, where can people find you?
You can find me on Instagram at akachi.audio. That's ACACI.audio. You can find me on Spotify as Akachi. And my website is still being made. So once that is done, that will be linked. And that's it for me. Also on Soundspace.
Perfect. Yeah, of course. You can follow Soundspace on your favorite podcatcher. Just look us up. Give us a 5-star review. Make sure to follow us on all of our social media pages. Links will be down below in the description. And for myself, I am at JaianMusic on social media. Just go to JaianMusic.com if you want to hire me for freelance audio services such as sound design, mixing, and mastering. So for myself, Neusha, and Anthony, this has been another episode of Soundspace. Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye-bye.